This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, it's week 38 of 2024, and do you feel the pace quickening, or is it just me? Election Day is a mere 7 weeks away, and with the wind at our backs, we'll be breezing into Thanksgiving just 3 weeks after that. That'll put us just 4 weeks to Christmas and wishing one another a Happy New Year a week later. Yikes. Where does the time go? Well, I've got another really interesting conversation coming up today with Sean Bach, another multi-talented franchise professional. But first, how about a huge thank you to Jenny Young, our rising star of franchising for Q3 right here on Franchise Today. It was so gratifying for me in so many ways to present my interview with Jenny last week and to continue tracking her forward progress as Brooklyn Robot Foundry continues to grow and expand responsibly. You'll hear a lot about responsible franchising today as well when Sean Bach joins us, but first, a reminder to pay us a visit at www.franchisetodaypodcast.com, where you can make guest suggestions, drop me a note, catch up on hundreds of archived episodes, and yes, please do leave a review. There is no better way to help new listeners find this podcast than to let others know just how much you enjoy listening and learning from those who join us here each week to share the trials and tribulations they've encountered along the way and to share the storied paths of their franchise journeys. Okay, with that said, a quick time out now, and I'll be right back with this week's guest, the very well-rounded Sean Bach, investor, legal, financial, and real estate guru, and Chief Development Officer at Pure Glow. Don't go away, we're just getting started.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
We are all familiar with Vistage, YPO, and EO. Well, now comes Zor Forum, a somewhat similar type of executive group, but this one comes with a twist. Zor Forum groups are exclusively for franchisors. Imagine a peer group for sharing and networking on a platform built exclusively for franchise executives. Zor Forum members are afforded unparalleled access to best practices and some of the brightest minds within the franchising world through regular meetings and a dedicated communications platform. In this post-COVID world, a franchise-specific mastermind or peer group is an endeavor worth making time for. Zor Forum groups of 6 to 10 will bring leaders together that are in similar situations, but with exclusivity in terms of their competitive sets, so that each can openly help others benefit from their respective knowledge, perspective, and experience with no fear of competitive loss. Network, learn, strategize, and remain motivated along your journey. Join a peer group, not just any peer group. Join the only one designed for emerging franchisors. Join Zor Forum. Learn more at zorforum.com. That's www.zorforum.com. Sean Bach is a strategic partner and investor at Pure Glow Sunless Tanning, an emerging franchise opportunity that combines health and beauty in a premium sunless tanning service. While this is an emerging brand, Sean brings with him more than 10 years' experience leading and growing franchise organizations within the beauty and wellness sector. Sean is an expert in developing and executing franchise growth strategies, building and training high-performance teams, and fostering strategic partnerships with passionate operators. He's also a hybrid executive with a strong background in legal and finance, holding a Juris Doctor's degree and an MBA in finance on top of his bachelor's in English. Sean has made quite the career of leveraging his multidisciplinary skills and knowledge to identify and invest in emerging service brands such as Heyday, a skincare company that he helped transform into a franchise platform as its president and chief development officer. and in a similar position with Drybar before that. Sean's mission is to empower entrepreneurs and customers alike with innovative and accessible service solutions that enhance their well-being and confidence. And he's here today to tell us about his most recent passion project, Pure Glow. Sean Bach, welcome to Franchise Today.
Stan, thank you so much for having me on. I've known you for quite a long time. Greatly respect and admire all your work and flattered that serving as a guest for you today.
It's a pleasure to have you, Sean. And you're not a typical guest on Franchise Today. And literally, though I do 4 Rising Stars of Franchise episodes, 1 a quarter, I don't even put you in that category, even though you are an emerging brand. You're an emerging brand with a great deal of prior experience. So I think that what we're going to do today is have some fun just talking about what kind of a psychological profile it takes for somebody that's got a JD and a master's in finance to find himself in the franchise development world. And we're going to have fun unpacking all of that. So why don't we start where we start every week? Tell us where you were. What were you doing when franchising found you?
Well, so I typically start my story and my franchise journey with my career, but, in thinking back as to when I was first exposed to franchising, my father was actually the chief financial officer for a family office in Wichita, Kansas. And the gentleman that he served was a person by the name of Dan Carney. So Dan Carney was actually the founder of Pizza Hut. So I would stroll into the Carney family office on occasion and got to interact with Dan Carney a lot. And he gave me one great piece of advice early on. He said, Sean, whatever you do in life, just figure things out, experiment, try different things until you're 30. And then by around that time, you should know what you want to do. And so I grew up really, my friends had parents who were Pizza Hut franchisees, didn't really know about the franchising world, but was exposed to it day in and day out from the people that I was around. But fast forward 20 plus years, I am a tax attorney trying to figure out my next thing. Tax was not something I was really excited about. And so I wanted to go into an in-house legal position. And so my sister's friend was the general counsel for Cold Stone Creamery. She was also a tax attorney. So she recognized kind of the qualities and talents that a tax attorney would have. She took a gamble on me, brought me in as associate counsel at Cold Stone Creamery. We were probably 700-800 units open. So they needed more attorneys to staff. And so that's when my franchise career started way back in April of 2005.
Would have been a little bit of legal work going on in the Cold Stone world back in those years, as I remember.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time. So, there were 2 moments that really kind of set the table as to where I am today. And one of them was actually the first week that I started at Cold Stone. My dad's friend, Joe Flynn, who was the first general counsel for Pizza Hut, he and I had lunch and I sat down and I said, look, I just started here. Want to learn everything you know about franchise, but more importantly, I want to figure out how to get ahead, how to take on more responsibility. And he looked at me quizzically and he said, well, do you want to get out of the legal department? And I said, well, why? He said, well, if you're in the legal department, you're stuck. And he said, look, if you want to be recognized, you want to be promoted, then you need to go somewhere where you're generating revenue. And so that was kind of like the first step for me to identify, where I could go and grow. And so thankfully, Cold Stone was just starting out their international growth. So I helped out from a legal standpoint. And then when my boss got promoted, he promoted me along with him. And so I was VP of International Development. So the other part of who I am and why I am today was that during my time as an associate counsel, I would often handle the terminations of franchisees out of the system. So the ops department would throw up their hands, wouldn't know what to do with these troubled franchisees. And what I found time and time again is that the issues could have been prevented a long time ago in the sales process. The prototypical terminated franchisee was an absentee owner who was sold or said, hey, hire a manager and find a location nearby your home and it should be great. And so time and time again, that's where the dream bubble was burst when they realized the amount of work that was needed and they weren't ready, prepared, or didn't want to put in the work to make it happen. So that really informed me in regards to, as I moved into the franchise development world, what's the best process? And to this day, when I have conversations with franchise candidates, I say, look, I'm going to be completely open, transparent. I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I'd rather hear no from you today rather than 2 years from now after you've opened and you said, hey, Sean, this is not what I expected. this is not what you told me what it was going to be like. So that's kind of the early stages of my life at Cold Stone.
It's interesting. Another little known fact that gets uncovered in these interviews, so much fun for me all the time. 06, 07, I had left my partnership. I sold my partnership in Wing Zone and found myself taking on the responsibility of Chief Development Officer from Maggie Moo's. So you and I were in super premium ice cream at about the same moment in time.
Yeah.
Mine didn't last long, though, because the Nixon merger brought Maggie Moo's and Marble Slab together, and each with a chief development officer, and me with very, very little tenure. I had just started, and Chris Stahl, who today is the president of Freddy's, was on the team at Marble Slab, and he wound up getting the position. But tough business, super premium ice cream.
It is. And to this day, when people say, like, people still ask me, like, hey, like, what dessert or ice cream concept should I open? I say, well, you're asking the wrong question. The question is, which real estate location should I be identifying first? And then you find the ice cream concept. Because that's all it's impulse driven. You got to find the real estate.
Well, move us along from there. What came next on the milestone list?
I was at Cold Stone for about 5 years. Great learning experience. Traveled to 20 different countries in 22 months. But my boss moved over to a concept called Fun Brands. I moved over with him. I was there for about 4.5 years. And so I served as the chief development officer. But what I realized is that if I wanted to expand my experience and who I was as a person, while my boss was amazing, great mentor, I knew I needed to see other models of how leadership works. So luckily, I was recruited by a small concept out of Southern California called Drybar. And Drybar in 2014 was just this small emerging fad brand that had company-owned locations. But what they realized is that they couldn't grow quickly enough via the company-owned model. So they wanted to start a franchise division. And so in 2014, I moved over and was employee number one. So, I wore many hats. First things first is I learned how to really grow a franchise organization within a company structure, learned how to sell a beauty service concept, understood what the marching orders were. But for the first year, I handled everything: franchise development, real estate, construction, obviously piggybacking off of all the work that the Drybar company-owned side performed. And it was probably the most educational and thoughtful ride that I've experienced. 6 years there, grew the department to about 7 people running the franchise division, over 50 locations open, another 25 in development. And I think what I'm most proud about is that in 2019, the board voted on 2 measures. The first is that they wanted to sell the products division, go to market and market that. And then after that was accomplished, they wanted to sell all the 90 company-owned locations and convert it into franchising. And the reason being is that they found that our franchise partners, who we carefully scrutinized and brought on and trained, actually performed better across just about every KPI metric. And what I've always found is that in the beauty service world and in most service categories where employees are the key to completing the mission, franchising is probably the best vehicle to accomplish what needs to be done. Because what Drybar realizes as they open more company locations and farther venues, it was tough to keep retained licensed employees. And so when you had a franchisee who was there day in and day out and developed a relationship with the stylist, the revenue grew exponentially. Profitability was great, because if you have happy employees, then you have happy client experiences. And so that's really what proved out at Drybar. And after 6 years, unfortunately, I was the last reduction in force as we went through the Delta wave over that summer. It was the Drybar operations was really skin and bones. And so I was fortunate enough to be recruited over to a concept called Heyday Skincare in the summer of 2020. And so I was tasked to do the same thing, which was create a franchise platform for growth off of the 10 company-owned locations that Heyday had opened in New York, Philadelphia, and in Los Angeles. And it was a great alignment with the founders. And we raised a Series A, 20 million round to really go aggressively in the skincare category, kind of what Drybar did. Heyday was trying to do in facials. My informed time at Drybar was really the method of go slow to go fast. And we were given the orders about really to grow aggressively. And so it was obvious to me and to how the work was getting done. Heyday was not the right fit for me. So after a couple of years, I left and was looking for kind of the next opportunity. And I think what I've learned throughout my career is I never turned down a call with a founder. And so when I was at Heyday, a woman by the name of Lauren Rempello-Beacott, who owned Pure Glow in Boston, called and asked me, hey, would I talk to her about franchising? And so I called her up. She was my first phone call when I left, because in the back of my mind, the airbrush tanning category was a completely underserved category, and for a number of reasons that we can discuss. But what I did is I basically placed a bet with Lauren and on Visits itself, because one, I believed that I could work with her in a foxhole. This was post-COVID, so she owned Pure Glow 100%. She got through COVID all on her own. And within about 2 months after COVID did the initial shutdown, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and obviously went through remission. She's got a clean bill of health. But, I said to myself, look, if launching a beauty franchise is going to be tough, there's going to be a lot of difficult roads ahead, and there's no better person to partner with than Lauren. So, and the other thing is I really wanted to control my own destiny. My time at Drybar at Heyday was really great, but I felt like I was at that point in my career where I needed to bet on myself, and this is my big bet.
What a story. And you're really following the same parallel path that a person would follow getting out of corporate America, getting into franchising as a franchisee. The same thing, driven by self-motivation to control your own destiny and to be able to write your own ticket and do what's best for you instead of serving some master elsewhere. So great story. I love the parallel and I love the experience. And the fact is, with that legal and financial experience behind you, you learned what not to do from some people that were doing things, maybe hitting the gas too hard in Fran Dev, and seeing the results of what happens as the result of mismanaged expectations was the best diploma you could get in doing franchising the way it should be done. So it's all good.
Yeah. No, it's what's interesting is that everybody is on their own journey. And for me, what I've recognized is I'm kind of like a Swiss Army knife, where I think I would be really bored. I'm very large, mature franchise concept that has tons of specialization. I can, with my background and education and experience, I can jump from one phone call that's franchise development to a call that's about construction to a call about our pro forma and forecasting and budgeting for 2025. So that, and when I recognize that that's a talent of mine, it's best served in the emerging franchise space, right? It's best served in companies that have a need for a Swiss Army knife and experience to tell them, hey, when we go around this corner, this is the issues we're going to be facing. So I'm very fortunate to be where I am today.
Well, you've shared a great deal with this audience for the first half of this conversation. Why don't we cut away here for a quick break? And when we come back, let's get talking about what you see in the crystal ball for both franchising at large and, of course, for Pure Glow and what it is you're up to for the next 1, 3, 5 years out. We're talking today with Sean Bach, an investor, principal, and a partner and chief development officer at Pure Glow. This is Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman. Don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And we are back with Sean Bach, investor, chief development officer, franchising guru at multiple brands in his career. And we've kind of covered off the road behind us. And now it's time to look ahead. So, Sean, how deeply into Pure Glow are you now in terms of FranDev? What's open? What is sold and not open? And tell us a little bit more about the brand itself and tanning without lights.
Yes. So Pure Glow, we always say, sits at the intersection of health and beauty. So the tanning industry really hasn't changed or evolved, over a 40-year span. The relics are the older organizations like Palm Beach Tan, Suntan City. They grew out of really the big box fitness concepts, because those big box fitness concepts offered UV beds as kind of an offshoot service. They realized the popularity of it and then wrapped a brand around it. And they really haven't evolved. And as we learn more from a health perspective, what the damage is from a UV ray perspective. It's not good. When you add up all cancer diagnosis, it doesn't even amount to the number of skin cancer diagnoses that happens every year. So there is this growing subcategory called airbrush tanning. And airbrush tanning is basically, it is a formulation that mimics how someone's skin actually reacts to the sun. So it's a DHA molecule that, much like how when you cut open an apple and you leave it there for a couple of hours, there's an oxidization process. So it's a browning, and that's what the formulation mimics. And so there is this growing trend that is starting to pop up. And what you're seeing today is it's underserved, meaning that people who are doing this business, it's typically mom and pop. It's maybe run out of the back of a salon. The operations aren't up to snuff, lack of employees, lack of marketing, lack of focus. And so that's where like franchising really comes in to lift up a category or subcategory. And that's where Pure Glow is played in. Pure Glow has been open since 2015. We now have 3 company-owned locations open in Boston, and we launched our franchise offering in November of last year. And in my initial conversations with Lauren, a couple of things were clear. One is that I wanted to invest in the business because I've been looking and tracking this trend over the last 5 years. And I really believe this is the next big beauty franchise concept. And then the other thing we were aligned on is that we wanted to deliver an outsized experience in this airbrush tanning category that it was lacking. So much like what Drybar did, which was really create a beautiful aesthetic environment for a blowout, we are doing that for the airbrush tanning. And so in order to do that, we believed in raising some capital to make that happen. And so we raised late last year, 1.4 million from a lead investor. She is a franchisee in the Drybar system. So all of our franchisees in Pure Glow system know and have confidence in the fact that there's somebody on the board who's a franchisee and speaking on their behalf. So we've launched, and I think what's probably the most overwhelming response is the quality of operators that we've attracted in the system. We have 7 franchisees officially signed up. All 7 come from the beauty world. So 4 come from the Drybar world. Another one comes from the European wax system. And then we have 2 who come from retail products. So one was at Johnson & Johnson on the Neutrogena account, and then another one who is a retail products buyer for a very large retailer. And the reason that I really feel like this is the next big category is that when you talk to anybody in the beauty service franchise category and you ask them what's their biggest pain points, they will tell you it's not client demand or customer demand. It is the recruitment and retention of licensed employees. Because you are dealing with a smaller pool of candidates, meaning a stylist has to have a cosmetology license or an esthetician has to have an aesthetics license, you're limited with who you can recruit. That's not the case with Pure Glow. So the airbrush service providers who perform the services don't need to be licensed as a cosmetologist or as an esthetician. So what that's done is expanded the pool of applicants. And that's where it's really been compelling for our current base of franchisees. So we're opening our first franchise location in Phoenix in a couple of weeks. And then soon to follow, our franchisee in Dallas is opening her first location. And ironically enough, the franchisee in Dallas, Shannon Williams, was the first franchisee for Drybar. And she has made quite a name for herself. She's opened, I believe, 8 Drybar locations over the years. And she's been pitched many, many beauty brands. But the moment she was pitched this idea, she's like, Sean, I get it. All I need to know is, does the formulation work? So she came to Boston, tried it out, and then she said, okay, how soon can we make this happen? So we've got 3 more in post-discovery day discussions who have verbally committed to us. So we're on a really great track. But I think the biggest thing that, when going back to my history, that I learned, that mantra, going slow to go fast, is really to be thoughtful on the pace of growth. Part of the reason why we also raised capital is so that I didn't want to go to franchise brokers at this time, because what I want to do is really prove out what I would call version 1.0 of our franchising. And that's what we're doing now. And then when we've proven it out and our franchisees are satisfied with the KPIs that they're hitting, that's when I know we can go to the broker networks. The other thing we've decided on is that we're not using an outsourced franchise sales department, an FSO. We're big believers in really being super selective and trying to attract the right people. And so we don't want absentee owners. We don't want owners who are going to keep their day job and kind of hire a manager who's never had experience in the beauty service world. we really want people all in. So either you've been experienced and managed teams as a franchisee, and that's where we're finding it, or you're quitting your day job and focusing on us. And so we've been pretty lucky in regards to how that's happened.
You grabbed two of my next questions, brokers and FSOs, and you covered both off pretty quickly for me without even being asked.
I really see value from an FSO perspective, especially in the home service business. It's really tough when you don't have a brick and mortar business to get your name out there. So, there's definitely, I see a need for that. And on the broker side, I want to go into a system, and the minute that I walk out of that room from a presentation, like, we're going to be first on that list because we've checked a lot of the boxes that brokers need. And I don't feel ready to do that until I have that version 1.0 kind of that story told.
I'm surprised that you're not running into more item 17 type issues of covenants not to compete in the health and beauty space from people like Drybar or other concepts that are like on the edge of doing what it is you do.
Yeah. Well, one, we've been very fortunate on the real estate side that the exclusives really don't kick in. And then on the non-compete side, our European wax franchisee, she's a former European wax franchisee. She just sold. And on the Drybar side, I think what we're finding is, and look, this is the WellBiz platform, Riverside's building a beauty platform. They see synergies, right? And so the Pure Glow customer base will drive to Drybar. The Drybar clients will drive to Pure Glow. So it is a win-win perspective.
So with all of that said, we're in the post-COVID world, which has just changed so many things from the status quo that we knew prior to 2020. What do you see in your crystal ball, both for Pure Glow as well as franchising at large, if you were prognosticating for the next 1, 3, 5 years out, and how much of what you're seeing is new to you post-COVID?
Wow, that's quite a question. So I think with Pure Glow, what we see is, and what we want to accomplish is to be the national brand, discussed like Massage Envy was, like Drybar was, Amazing Lash, the leading category for airbrush tanning. I think we have the ability to do that. And part of what we need to do and what is really important is to convert people away from the sun, UV beds, and really poor, schlocky spray tan booths. So that's kind of our job over the next 3 to 5 years. And I have 110% confidence that we're going to do it. And the reason being is that the minute that somebody tries our formulation, all of the stereotypes of what they thought a spray tan was goes away. And what was most interesting to me was when someone on our digital marketing side, we use Hot Dish, great firm, they came into Boston, got the services done. And one of the women walked out after her service. She looked in the mirror and she said, wow, I don't need to wear makeup for the next 10 days. And the minute that I heard that, I realized, okay, we are solving such a huge need at this point in time. If we can have somebody have a service and feel like they don't need to wear makeup for the next 7 to 10 days, like, it's a game changer. So for us, it's just keeping our head down and focusing on the basic building blocks of franchisee profitability. How quickly can we get them to break even? And then I think from a quote unquote NPS score with our franchisees, the minute they say I'm ready to open my second location, that's when I know like I can start going to brokers. And Pure Glow version 1.0 is complete. And now we're on to Pure Glow version 2.0.
Are you allowing single unit operators to come in with commitments to stores 2, 3, 4, or how are you managing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stan. So I've actually had some very unique conversations with very large multi-unit operators because we have a tried and true rule. We don't offer more than 5 locations. Like, there's no negotiations beyond that. And that's really informed in my 20 years in franchise development. And it's what I tell them is like, look, if you want to own and operate a very large market, we can make that happen. Our development schedule is focused on the first 5 locations. We'll give you that protected territory, that large territory that you want. But in exchange, you have to open these first 5 in the next 2 to 3 years. And the second thing I tell them is like, look, Pure Glow, when we get to 300 locations, will only happen because the first 10 to 20 are really outstanding performers. And I said, I'd rather have us and your capital focus on your first 2 to 3 locations and be as successful as possible. So I'd rather us focus on the first 5 and then kind of go from there. We also right-size the agreements. As somebody who is new into the business, like, we want to limit what the downside is for both. So we really right-size from that perspective.
And what about real estate? What kinds of locations are you looking at?
Yeah. So part of what in this category of tanning is the old relics and dinosaurs are mostly Class B, Class C retail. And so we are focused on Class Class A. So our Back Bay location is just off of Newbury Street, which is the high street of Boston. We'll be opening in Chestnut Hill, and we're opening in Seaport, and we're opening in really Class A developments. Our Pure Glow location in Phoenix is right next to Amy Ross's Drybar on 32nd and Camelback. And so we really want to be in Whole Foods, grocery anchors locations. We're only 1,000 square feet. We only need 4 treatment rooms to hit what we need to do. And so we're really focused on really high traffic areas, places where our clients will be.
All right. The big question of the day, Sean, are you ready?
I'm ready.
What have I not asked you yet, Sean, that you might wish I did?
Oh, I think what's interesting and where I think I bring a lot of interesting observations is what's happening in the emerging franchise space and how people are growing. Because when I first started this 2.5 years ago, a lot of the research I did, there was not a lot of help or capital access for founders who wanted to franchise. And so that's where I stepped in, and my investment in Pure Glow is evidence of that. We were lucky to find a really great lead investor. But what I'm really surprised about was back then, the lack of professional money coming into the emerging franchise space. I think that's changing. I think you're seeing a fair number of smart investors who are going downstream. And I think that that's probably going to be a very interesting subsector to watch out for in the next 3 to 5 years. That combined with the California disclosure laws and how that may impact brokers and FSOs, it's going to be a really interesting time in the emerging franchise space. That coupled with where the opportunities are for emerging franchise concepts to grow and scale without a lot of SG&A. I mean, the use of internally how we're using ChatGPT for our marketing and operations manual like creations, and the offshore, nearshore type of employees who are really, really great. Emerging franchisors can really rethink how a business can grow into a mature franchisor, and you don't need as many people as you really think you do. So I think that those are interesting aspects that not a lot of people are talking about these days.
Well, they would be if they read Big Money in Franchising. Give a little plug to Alicia Miller for her book, which is all about scaling your business in the era of private equity. And she tells us all that if we think private equity has made their presence felt in the last 20 years, buckle up. You've not seen anything yet.
Well, Stan, it's unfortunate we are not on video because I literally have her book right next to me. I had to access it yesterday to do working on our 2025 forecast. And I think that there are 2 books in the franchise space, Shelley Sun's book, which was written, I think, 10, 12 years ago, and then her book on Big Money in Franchising. I can't speak more highly enough on how well-researched it is, how thoughtful it is, and how anybody who is in the emerging franchise space and or beyond, if they don't read this, they're completely missing out on what's going on. I will say that had I read her book 2 years ago before I invested, it would have scared me in terms of the amount of emerging franchises that fail. But I think, knowing that is helped us along the way of how to protect the downside and understand the risks involved and how do we address them. So I can't speak more highly enough about her book.
Sean, have got some contact info for those who have been intrigued by what you've shared here today and who want to get back in touch with you.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in going all in on one social platform. So for me, that's LinkedIn. So Sean Bock, SeanBock. You can find me pretty easily on there, and I'm always happy to connect. And as I said, I have never turned down a call with a founder who wants to learn about franchising. I just had a call this morning with one. So always happy to be a sounding board, because what I love about franchising is that I didn't get to where I was without people, like you, Stan. And I still remember Bob Gappa way back when, who was so influential for me and the right and thoughtful way to do franchise development. So this is my way of giving back.
Well, that's what we all do in franchising. We pay back by paying forward. It's been a pleasure getting to know you better here today, Sean. And we've got some more things to talk about, but we'll take those offline and let the audience get on with their day. What do you say?
That sounds great, Stan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean Bach, investor, principal, chief development officer at Pure Glow. Thanks for being here. Well, that's a wrap for today, but there's plenty more coming in the weeks ahead. Remember to subscribe to Franchise Today wherever you chase your podcasts, and I'll see you back here again next time. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today. Or, as always, download episodes on demand at blogtalkradio.com.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.